In the Belt and Road Initiative, China and Greece are celebrating 47 years of diplomatic relations this year. What major milestones have the two countries already achieved under the Belt and Road Initiative? What opportunities are still ahead? And a Chinese organization is bringing farming techniques to Mauritania, a West African country. What's the story and what has been the impact so far? Welcome to The Point, an opinion show coming to you from Beijing. I'm Li Xin. China and Greece, home to two of the world's oldest civilizations, mark 47 years of diplomatic relations this year. The two countries are also celebrating 13 years of comprehensive strategic partnership, which has deepened bilateral relations, especially through economic and trade cooperation. Since 2006, China and Greece have steadily built up mutual trust and strengthened cooperation within international organizations such as the United Nations. But a major milestone occurred in August 2018 when the Greek and Chinese foreign ministers signed a memorandum of understanding for Greece to join the China-proposed Belt and Road Initiative, despite some pressure from the European Union. As China's State Councillor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi put it, the signing is like installing a new high-powered engine for China-Greece relations that will inject a strong and long-lasting impetus into the pragmatic cooperation between the two sides. So what does the new high-powered engine mean in tangible terms? How does Greece really benefit from the BRI partnership, and what future opportunities does Greece foresee through this initiative? I sat down with Georgios Katrougalos, the new Foreign Minister of Greece, during his very first official visit to China. I started by asking him if this new high-powered engine has indeed been ignited.
First of all, we have been the first Western European country that has signed a similar MOU. From this point on, other European countries have joined. We have decided to do so, to be pioneers, exactly because, as I said, we've recognized in China an important partner and are very much alignment of interests. And from this point on, we have a relative progress in our relationship. For instance, agricultural products have doubled regarding their exports from Greece to China. Now that you are becoming a prosperous society, with a lot of consumers, we think that high-quality agricultural products like those that we have, they could be very much welcome in China. And One Belt One Road Initiative is part of that because it helps infrastructure, flights, and so on between the two countries.
What are some of the measures, what are some of the concrete projects that are being discussed, that are being promoted to bring that high-power engine into full speed?
First of all, the expansion of the port of Piraeus. You know that it has really an important progress during the last 3 years. We both expect it to be the first port in the Mediterranean Sea in the decade to come. So we want, our first ambition is not to limit to Piraeus, but to have the connection of the port with Central Europe by a modern railway network that would connect Piraeus, Belgrade, Budapest. And for that, we think that it is very much useful to associate One Belt, One Road Initiative with the similar European plans. They're called Eurasian connectivity. So we're trying to be exactly that, a kind of moderator, a kind, let's say, of linkage between European Union projects and the BRI.
Greece just came out of the austerity period of time, and I understand the level of economic performance is still below the pre-crisis level. What does all of that, the Belt and Road and the expansion in the future, mean for the Greek economy?
You're very right to say that. We lost about 1/4 of our GDP, of our national wealth during the crisis. And although last year we had a growth of 2%, there is a forecast for even better, let's say, performance this year. We are still behind the pre-crisis levels. What is good is that we try to change our economic model to the better. I have just mentioned our comparative advantage because of our geopolitical position. We want to exploit further other advantages we have, for instance, the most educated young generation ever, this very high biodiversity we have in Greece, which helps having agricultural or even pharmaceutical products. So we expect our relationship with China to further promote these comparative advantages.
Okay. You mentioned the port of Piraeus. Let's talk a little bit more about that. Actually, I found that it's very impressive because over the past 10 years, the port has become number 37 on the famous Lloyd's list of the world's top 100 port. 10 years ago, it was 93.
Exactly.
So it's a very impressive progress. And now I understand the port is now the second largest in the Mediterranean and is looking to become the first in the Mediterranean. How was this transition? How has this improvement in performance possible in such a short period of time? Of course, Cisco put a lot of money, but how did it work so that it really worked?
We have worked together. And I wanted to underscore something which is very important for the image of China in Europe. It is not just the economic success. COSCO, under our, of course, encouragement, has agreed a collective agreement with the workers of the port of Piraeus, increasing their salaries. And this happened when, because of the crisis, in Greece, salaries have fallen, sometimes dramatically. Why this is important? Not just for the welfare of our workers, which of course is for us the most important thing, also for the image of China abroad, because there are a lot of people saying that when we have Chinese investment, this is tantamount with lowering of working standards. Port of Piraeus is a success story exactly for the economic performance, but also because of this social, I think, connotation.
I'm really curious. I mean, of course, COSCO paid special attention to the welfare of these workers, and yet it is a remarkable story in terms of changing people's perception of Chinese investors from some kind of invader to a real investor. How did that perception take place? Was it simply because they lifted the salary, or was there other factors involved?
No. I must tell that even political parties like ours was skeptical initially towards this investment, exactly because we were considering some of the initial contract to be a little in favor of COSCO. But working together, we have improved this contract. And more importantly, the whole spirit of cooperation between the two countries has resulted to a better understanding. And since we had this understanding, it was easy to expand the ambition of both parties.
Yeah. So what does the whole experience tell you about Chinese investment, about China's intentions to work in European countries, and how do you think, now that you have a better understanding, countries can work with China?
Of course. I fully embrace and understand this idea of the shared future that President Xi mentions in his speeches. I think that we can have win-win situations through the BRI road. We do not consider at all something compromising similar European projects. I mentioned before that we consider very much in line what in the European Union we want to do with the connectivity projects of ours in the BRI. And I think exactly Port of Piraeus is a success story which underscores all that.
Is that also the reason why you have a slightly different point of view in terms of Chinese investment with some other European countries, especially those who are in Brussels? I understand you actually were not on board for a kind of collective screening mechanism for Chinese investment in Europe.
We have a sensitivity regarding, for instance, security threats. But we do not find, regarding at least the investments we know of China in our country, to exist similar, let's say, challenges to defense or security. So we are not opposing any kind of screening that would like to protect European interests in these fields, defense, security, and so on. But regarding commercial transactions, we believe in economic multilateralism, we believe in open commerce, and I think this is also the spirit of the European Union.
On the future map of Europe, where is China?
President Juncker is making a joke, but I think it demonstrates let's say, the dilemma of Europe today. It says that the European Union is a global payer. We contribute a lot as donors to aid to some countries, but it is not a global player, meaning that we are an economic giant. Altogether, we are in par with China and the United States, if we see the aggregate of the GDP, but we still struggling to have one voice in foreign affairs, and we are really a dwarf in defense matters. So what I think is the important issue for Europe is to be united politically, and that means that it must face challenges in its interior very much related to the explosion of inequalities, which of course undermine this feeling of belonging.
So where was China for Europe?
Well, China is a partner, I think, for the majority of the European countries and for the European Union per se, because we have started a negotiation of new treaties between us in order to promote further our cooperation.
Where does Greece see itself in the relationship between China and Europe, looking at the kind of future you were talking about?
This is a very good question, because generally we want to be a kind of moderator of bridge between European Union and, let's say, other great powers, not just big countries like you. The Arab world is a classical example with whom we want to have this kind of connection, never been a colonial power. But especially with China, exactly because we have a respect towards the Chinese civilization, I think an almost spontaneous sympathy towards you. Very similar mentality, although you are an Asian nation and we are a European one. And for other reasons, we think that we can be, let's say, a connection linkage between you and the European Union.
An Athens-based institution released the survey, the report of us based on survey of many people and many articles in Greece. And the survey was about the image of China in the eyes of Greek people, mostly positive. But one thing is interesting. It found that the Greeks have a fuzzy image of the Chinese civilization. The word fuzzy, I'm sure you understand. Where do you think that comes from? And is there anything about the Chinese culture that's fuzzy to you?
No.
And how do you think that can be addressed?
Well, of course, the respect of civilization is one thing. The other is what I told you. I think that you look like us. You laugh a lot. You speak in a loud voice. You're not like other people in Europe. Regarding now the people-to-people connection, we have a lot to do on that. You are sending about 130 million tourists abroad, and just 120,000 are coming to Greece, 100th for that. And an even smaller number of Greek tourists is coming to China. So a first very logical step would be to increase.
That was Georgios Katrougalos, the Foreign Minister of Greece. You're watching The Point with me, Liu Xin. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, Chinese Holstein, or a type of Chinese cows, are chewing Chinese alfalfa, but in Mauritania. But why? We've got two insiders to help us find out.